My name is Rebecca Kimmons, and I am a graduate of West Virginia University, 1971 School of Journalism. And like so many others, when we heard that major transformation is underway at WVU, I was concerned because I felt I didn't have enough information. And I have a colleague here who is moderating our meeting. And Mr. Dan Page is going to join me here for just a moment. I'll introduce him. Dan and I are both WVU grads, same year, 1971, journalism. And Dan has a very interesting background. I'm going to let him speak for just a moment and I'll rejoin.
Thank you. The reason I'm involved in this is I would like to be a better alumnus. I want to know more about what's going on there. I need to take responsibility for that for myself. I mean, I'm going to start, and I've learned to do this, watching the news releases from the university, especially those on the Board of Governors page. I want to make sure I understand what's going on. Getting that information, I don't understand what I'm hearing now, and that's partly on me, and I want to know what this university is going to look like in the future. And Create West Virginia is an organization devoted to looking at West Virginia, not today, but tomorrow and in the future. So we want to find a way, determine whether there is a means to gather what the alumni, people who believe in the university, who support the university, whose kids go to the university, if they are, what they want, what they know about the university and what they feel as if they need to know, but more importantly, what they want the university to be in the distant future, in the near distant future. And that's why we're here, and we want to be able to provide that information to the university. If we can, as alumni and interested mountaineer people, we want to get together and create a dialogue with the university. Because one of the things I think we don't have today is a dialogue. Maybe that it works through the foundation. The foundation is not everybody. This is a means to get people together, talk to the university, and hear from them what their interests are, what their plans are for the future. We don't know what's going to happen in the next month, but we do want to make sure we have a way of maybe helping see what the future looks like, and that's why we're here. Thank you.
Create West Virginia was a grassroots group of people who were intensely interested in the future of West Virginia. 2007, it all started with a white paper that was called Creativity, Culture, and Innovation, West Virginia in the New Economy. And many people didn't realize that new economy was an actual term for the economy that's built on knowledge and technology and education, a knowledge economy rather than a labor-based economy. And for better or for worse, there's a lot of talk about it now. Globally, the United States is in the information economy, not the labor economy. And there are many people, especially in our state of West Virginia, we have been laborers. We're a blue-collar state. We have provided labor to power the United States. Now everything is shifting. Back in 2007, those of us who were involved in Create West Virginia, we didn't cause it to happen, but we saw it happening, that it was already well underway in other parts of our nation and certainly in the world. So what we were trying to do with Create West Virginia was sound the call and tell our fellow West Virginians that they are not captive. You know, that we have as much brains, as much talent, as much ability to make change as anybody else. And so what we wanted to do, you know, at that time in 2007, West Virginia had the lowest entrepreneurial startup rate in the United States. We started up fewer businesses than per capita than any other place in the United States. And we felt there's something going on here. And you hear a lot of talk about come here and make jobs, come here and bring us jobs. What Create West Virginia was saying is the innovators are job creators. And we need to start thinking about how to create our own jobs. Small businesses, you know, I understand that anything less than 500 employees is considered a small business. So what we were hoping to do is instill confidence in our fellow West Virginians that we can be entrepreneurial, we can be innovative. So we talked a lot. We did statewide conferences trying to inject this vocabulary of new economy thinking into the general culture. And we got people talking a lot about entrepreneurship. So that's tonight, or last week, when we heard about the changes afoot at West Virginia University, the obliteration of certain, 32 majors, I believe, the cancellation of the world languages curriculum, we were concerned because that seems like it's not going to prepare West Virginians for the global world that we are so much already a part of. And we were concerned. So the alumni, I'm a part of it, the alumni in Charleston, we were hearing lots of hue and cry. So we had a little meeting this past Sunday morning, and we decided to go out and do these meetings around West Virginia in various sections. Last night was our trial balloon meeting in Charleston. We had about 20 people in the room and one person on Zoom. So we got the news release out. We were thankful that the local newspaper carried the release about tonight's event. We had several people call and say that they would join us tonight by Zoom. And unfortunately, I think we're having a lot of technical difficulties with getting onto the Zoom. So our room is, frankly, I must admit, this room is empty. And I'm sorry, I wish that there were more people here, but I would like to recognize Delegate Sean Fluharty, who has made time to come tonight, and I would like for him to come and talk about, I'm presuming you are a WVU alum?
I am.
All right, so come up here and tell us about your thinking. Tonight's meeting was supposed to be a
I
visioning.
might have more questions than comments at this
You
point.
may. What we found out last night is that people do have more questions.
So what have you heard in Charleston?
Well, there's lots of things in Charleston. There are several groups that are forming ad hoc, people that want to do something. Create West Virginia wanted to take the tack of not complaining, but to come up with the visioning ideas of, we have some people coming. Happy to see you. Sean, do come though. And
I could probably just hang out here.
What I want to do is get you recorded.
Oh, okay.
So when you come up to speak, whatever you may have to say, whether they're questions, opinions, whatever, you need to be right here so that we can get you recorded. Sean, who already did
See Betty's on the line. I know Betty Clark.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Betty. All right, so Sean.
Well, no, thanks for having me. I didn't come with any prepared comments. Like I said, I have more questions than anything. I think a lot of people are in the dark about what's going on, and I think a lot of the blame can go across the board, whether it's WVU for the lack of communication to the general public and alumnus like myself and others, and also the legislature, which, quite frankly, if we would look at the numbers that are out there right now, if we had been funding higher education and WVU in particular like we have in years past, the deficit that they're now facing, roughly 45 million, would not look like 45 million. It would look more like 7 million or 8 million. There's different numbers out there on an analysis perspective. So, I think we have a lot of issues moving forward on what the future looks like. So I have many questions just like you do. I just returned from Ireland a few days ago, and we were celebrating the 25th signing of the the Good Friday Agreement. And that dealt with legislators from the United States going over and showcasing, that we have these allies. And I was invited with Speaker Hanshaw from West Virginia, and there were about 100 of us in total. Point being, we're trying to build our relationships throughout the world, right? And we have a flagship university which we showcase to the world that we are prepared to enter this global economy. And I feel like what we're doing now through the treatment from the legislature to the mismanagement, quite frankly, of what's going on at WVU, it's something that showcases to the world that maybe we're not as prepared as we would like to be, or that we tell the world we are. And so going forward, that causes, in my opinion, chaos and confusion, and doesn't prepare our students as the flagship university for today's economy. And that would be my biggest concern for what we're facing right now in West Virginia in general, in particular with WVU. So we are in a situation that I think is not very sustainable. And I would love to know what the vision really is, because I haven't heard directly what that vision looks like. Other than some concerns, I know that President Gee was at the Greenbrier today, which is interesting because he didn't seem to be in the legislature very often this past session for advocating for funding for West Virginia University. So,
Well, that's an astute observation, certainly.
Sure.
Many people have been wondering why President Gee was not boldly leading a charge for WVU, and what is the vision for WVU? Now, Gee said, when he came back to West Virginia University, he said that he was going to grow the university, that by this date, we would be looking at 40,000 students on the campus. Of course, he couldn't foresee COVID. Many times when we make those bold projections, we don't really know. We make those kinds of projections in hope, and things happen. But as some people have noticed and observed, if you were paying attention, you could see this coming. It was rather subtle, this information. But other universities, and this is the thing, the analysis that some people have made, looked at other comparable universities who are facing similar issues. How have they dealt with this? They have not made these draconian cuts in programs and faculty. It's not been done on the backs of the faculty and the precious and programs that have taken years to create and develop. So we're thinking at Create West Virginia that there's not any problem that creativity can't solve. That's kind of our byword, our motto. So we're thinking that the reason why we've driven up here to Wheeling tonight, we're glad to see some folks here to talk. We wanted to take the temperature of Wheeling, see what they're thinking, what the Upper Ohio Valley is thinking, the alums. So if you too, I just had some people come in, if you're interested, if you have questions, I would like for you to come up here so that we can get a good recording of what you have to say. Tell me who you are, and tell me if you are alums, what year you graduated, what your field of study was, what you're doing now with that degree. And if you don't happen, if you're just interested in what's going on at WVU, I'm sure you have a good reason for being here tonight. So if I could get you to come up.
My name is Christine. I am not an alum of WVU. We're here because my husband and I, we recently moved to Wheeling, West Virginia, and we really want to know what's going on in the community. What major minds are at play in creating West Virginia. There's a lot of building going on, a lot of infrastructure going on, and a lot of people that are moving from out of state like us into West Virginia. So we're really just curious and wanted to see what Create WVU was all about.
All right. Well, so I'd like to ask you, why did you choose to move here?
So we moved from Florida, and during COVID, I moved myself and my daughters from New York. I'm an interior designer, and I was doing a lot in Manhattan. And then when the pandemic hit, everything shut down. And I lost so many clients, so many contractors and developers went out of business. And I decided that I didn't want to live somewhere that would happen at the drop of a hat. So moved to Florida, decided for many reasons that was not it for us just after 2 years. And we moved to Wheeling, particularly because of the building that's going on, the homes, the ability to work. My husband works remotely, so the company he works for is based in Florida. I'm an interior designer, so I work for myself. And already it's been 3 months and I am getting pretty busy. So I see that there is a need for residential homeowners and then also commercial developers for what I do. But also the community. The schools are great. We have 3 children and the values are just phenomenal. We are so happy to have our children be able to just ride their bikes and go out and not worry about them where we live. And that is not something that we came across in Florida, definitely, or in New York. So it's really just a whole lifestyle change.
How did you choose Wheeling?
So actually Zillow. Yeah, so my husband's from Georgia. Like I said, I'm from New York. And we were looking and we knew it wasn't Florida. We kind of were thinking maybe Georgia. I was like, I want seasons. So we started looking just north. I was thinking upstate New York, but it's so much snow. And Zillow just recommended it. And we started talking to our friends, and so many people that we knew were from Morgantown, vacation to Uval Bay. We were like, how did we not know about this little gem? So we visited and we instantly fell in love, and that's how that started.
Have you ever been to Morgantown, where WVU, the main campus?
Yes. I haven't been able to spend a lot of time there yet, just with the move and getting my business started. But it is beautiful, and there is a lot going on. And I'm excited to see what Create WVU is all about.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christy. Thank you. It's your husband.
She said it all.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Christy, let me ask you, what is your educational background?
Yeah, so I have my bachelor's in interior design from the Art Institute of Pittsburgh.
Oh, you know what? You should really be speaking here so we can
Oh.
capture this. I'm sorry.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah. Let's talk about education. Let's talk about the value of, tell us about your educational experience. You went to, tell us again.
Yeah, so I have my associates from Briarcliff College, which is in New York. And then that was for business administration. And I still didn't know what I wanted to major in. So I chose interior design. I really did a lot of soul searching on what my passions were. And I decided the Art Institute of Pittsburgh. And the experience was good. I did a lot of my classes online and remotely, which was incredibly difficult. But it was a great experience.
As far as art education, did you have classes in art?
Yes.
That was part of
Yep,
the
fine art. Mhm.
In fine art. So some of the classes on the chopping block at West Virginia University are fine art classes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's sad to hear, because I do see a need for what I do, which is interior design, but also architecture, also just artists in general. I know that you don't have to technically be, have a technical education to be an artist, but some of the best artists that I have worked with, either professionally or just known personally, they do have an extensive background in art education. And then me, myself, my degree is in fine arts. And I loved it because it wasn't just the core curriculum. It wasn't just things that I needed to learn, but it also helped my passion. It helped fuel my passion and get me through. I am a creative person, so it helped get me through the years of school that I think would have been boring for me otherwise.
Yeah.
Well, all right, I think that makes a strong statement for the importance of arts education.
We can't hear the speakers. We can't hear your questions.
Oh, could you hear, though, you could hear,
We heard her. I don't know who that was, but we didn't hear what you said to her.
okay, well then, we have a very small gathering here tonight.
I know.
So I would like to say that I would correct that, but Dan, I think Dan's going to come back and talk for a moment.
We don't want to waste people's time.
No, we don't.
Did want to say we've got I know some people have submitted comments maybe in Charleston, but Betty is on here, Carrie and Alyssa, who was just speaking, so I hope we get some comments from some folks later.
Yes, absolutely. So Dan, go ahead, and then we'll bring in the people who have joined us by Zoom.
I just wanted to say, just very quickly, one of the reasons that we're here is because we believe in the mission of West Virginia University. We personally benefited from it, and many
It's
people
not-
from last night told stories about the importance of the university in their lives, and I would argue that it's the most important institution in the state. I don't want to dwell on what's going on there right now. I know plenty of people are doing that, but as I said earlier this evening, I want to see what we're going to be like in 15, 20, 30 years, because I think the university has to be strategic in the way it changes. We know change is inevitable. No institution is immune from change. How that happens is important. This is an effort, at least from my perspective, this is an effort to organize the alumni and people interested in the university to develop a voice, to speak to the university in a different on a different channel than they hear now. They're hearing from the Alumni Foundation. They may be hearing from critical players and whatever it may be, the legislature, I don't know. But I want to see a grassroots representation from among the people of West Virginia, especially those who really care about the institution. That's my motivation.
And that's what we're doing right now, is creating this grassroots groundswell. Here we are. So Corey Zinn is managing our Zoom. So why don't you bring on speakers who have joined us through Zoom?
Yeah, so let's maybe Alyssa, would you like to speak about what brought you here today and your experience with WVU and any of your kind of ideas?
I would be happy to. Just remember, can you hear me?
Yes. Would you like to turn your video on, or no need if you don't want to?
No.
Okay.
I didn't put my makeup on, so
Oh.
I'd rather not.
No problem.
Just remember, I'm the person that gave you directions to make it to the library tonight. I would like to say, and I indicated this earlier, that I am not a graduate of West Virginia University. However, I certainly recognize that the university, by eliminating those programs and departments, makes them less competitive with the private schools in the country, and more importantly, deprives the students of a comprehensive liberal arts education. And I believe that in turn will make them less marketable when they get out of school and start looking for work. I mean, people often ask, why is it worth paying for a private school education as opposed to going to a state school? Well, by eliminating those programs, WVU is making the case for private education. And more importantly, as the faculty begin to leave, the university community will become much more insular and much less diversified. If the university this year is facing a decline in their enrollment, they will only be destined to experience a greater decline in their enrollment as a result of these decisions. More importantly, the optics of the whole situation don't bode well. And I know there's been discussion about the president of the university, but it seems to me if he was granted an increase in his salary, despite the dwindling enrollment, and with this elimination of programs and departments, it doesn't look good. So I would just like to encourage, I've been very impressed. My experience with WVU has been in their medical services, which I've been very impressed by. I know people access their programs from all over the country in terms of being interns, residents, and doctors, patients, research assistants, and researchers, clinical trials. By eliminating those programs, the university will have to draw from outside the state for even their medical programming at a greater degree. I'm finished.
Thank you so much. Those are some great comments.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I didn't know what I was going to say, but I guess I can talk. Oh, and can I just say one other thing?
Sure.
We received notice of this meeting via the urging of our state delegate, who I'm guessing is supportive of what you're trying to do. But the lack of attendance at tonight is probably a combination of the last minute planning and the fact that those who are most affected will probably go elsewhere. And it's very sad, as Wheeling in particular has embarked on a revitalization effort through nonprofit organizations, through local government, through federal funding, and it just doesn't jive with what the state university is planning to do.
Well said. We really appreciate it, Alyssa. And where are you? You're in Wheeling?
I'm in Wheeling, yes.
I'm glad you made it.
Born and raised in Wheeling.
All right.
Okay, and it's Elisa, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, and I just want to verify, when we talked before, you mentioned a compilation of the dialogue that you're collecting from these different meetings, so we'll know how it all comes together, and perhaps we too can speak with our delegates to emphasize the importance of this.
Yeah, and if everybody in the Zoom would like to, give us your email in the chat, and I think we're taking there's a sign-in sheet at the event as well, but we'll follow up with you and might be able to collect more comments or just keep you up to date with what's going on.
Can you also provide us a listing and contact information for the WVU Board of Governors?
Oh, that's an interesting thing.
Why not?
Absolutely. I mean, yes.
They're the ones that you said are ultimately going to be making the decision. Perhaps they need to hear from us directly. If you could do that research for us and provide us with that information, I'm happy to follow up.
We'll see what we can do. Let's hear from someone else on Zoom. If Carrie, would you like to speak and tell us what brings you here and your connections with WVU?
Sure. Hi there. Good evening. My name's Carrie.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Elisa. I was born and raised in Wheeling. I live in Maryland now, so I left West Virginia quite a lot of years ago, but I was the class of '98 in the World Languages Department. So hearing this news has really hit hard, especially after being a public school teacher for 20 some years, I just can't imagine a university the size of West Virginia not having this department, among others. I'll share an article that I recently read in the New York Times on this, and unfortunately, it's not just something that's affecting WVU. There are liberal arts programs that are at risk all over. I think, yes, budget cuts are part of it, but I think in order to really make some decisions and moving forward, I think the political climate needs to be looked at. Throughout public education recently, there's been a lot of risk. I don't know what I want to say against teachers, but with the curriculum that states have created and things that should be taught and shouldn't be taught, but that's moving up through the higher education system. So anyway, I haven't done a ton of research on this since this has all come out to know exactly what universities are being affected. But if liberal arts programs continue to be defunded and removed from universities, it will cost a lot more in order to get that education elsewhere, minus the fact that you're not providing something as valuable as a liberal arts education to the residents of the state and those who want to come in for an education. And I think replacing teachers with virtual, I don't know how they would do it, but language learning apps, it's just not sufficient. So anyway, that's kind of my take on it. Like I said, I'm out of state now, but this did hit hard.
Where are you located now?
I'm in Maryland, in the DC Annapolis area, and I've taught Spanish in the area for 15 years, and I've taught Spanish in other states, and then I've taught ESOL abroad and in Maryland as well. So my whole career has been in language, and it all started in Wheeling, as a ninth grader when I started taking Spanish at Philadelphia Junior High School. So once I started language, I learned a lot more about myself and my own strengths, and it just took off from there. So to imagine that this program wouldn't exist, it's just kind of unfathomable.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'd like to interject that Corey Zinn is managing our Zoom from Charleston. Corey is the executive director of Create West Virginia, and he's very much more technically proficient than I am. And he is a WVU alum. Yeah.
Thank you, Becky. You do pretty well.
You should talk a bit about your background, when you graduated, and the kind of multidisciplinary, whatever it is. Talk about it.
Okay. Let me, I'll bring my camera on. Hi, guys.
Hi.
So yeah, I graduated WVU. My name's Corey Zinn. I graduated from WVU in 2014 from the Business and Economics College with a marketing degree. I was also the first person to get the music technology minor, which I also really ran with. I was production director at U92 for a couple of years, and also wrote some articles with the DA, usually some pickup articles, arts and entertainment stuff normally. But yeah, there's a lot to be kind of worried about these days in West Virginia, it feels like. But yeah, the WVU, announcements about these cuts really feels close to home. I've been personally a little disappointed in even trying to stay engaged with WVU as an alum. it often kind of feels like, you know, you leave and then you start getting letters like, hey, give us more money, without really, you know, even having some struggles finding a job or starting a business out the gate. It felt like, I don't know, it just felt a little interesting. But I know it's tough as an institution. You have so many people coming through. But it is really, I think what surprises me most, especially coming from the business and economics school, you know, they touted, when I remember when I was there, top 100 online business schools in the country or the world, maybe. I don't know if they still kind of say that they're ranked there, and the languages are, yeah, certainly a huge part of that. The global economy is ever growing, and kind of being closer connected, and I think it is really important to you know, we can kind of use translators and maybe all learn English maybe, but that, you know, that just doesn't feel right. There's so many other markets, and so much more you can understand about cultures. And WVU also has an amazing study, their what do you call it, the student transfers, what is the word I'm looking for? The abroad students that exchange. Thank you. The student exchange program. I've met a lot of people from all over the world at WVU, and I was amazed that they found it. But they always said, "Wow, this was such a good deal, and what a beautiful place, and the classes are great, and I'm learning so much, and it was reasonably priced for them." And I was grateful to meet so many people with different cultures and different backgrounds and kind of learn from that. So it only adds to, I think, the importance of the languages. And certainly I would think that, you know, German, Italian, Portuguese, Indian would be really important, given their huge economies in the countries where those are spoken so heavily. I don't want to take up too much more time than others, for others to speak.
Can I just ask, since you're the director, have you contacted anyone on the Board of Governors?
I have not personally. No, we're kind of working out how to. There's been some contact with, I believe at least maybe one member we've been in a conversation with, just to get some temperature, but it's kind of difficult to read. But Becky might be able to speak more on that. She's been, her and our other board member, Morgan King, as well as Dan Page, have been, you know, the leads on this project, and kind of staying in touch with what's going on at WVU. I know that Betty Rivard, we heard from her in Charleston, but she did say she had a question for Delegate Fluharty if he was still there.
Did he leave? Okay, he's talking to a reporter just outside our room here tonight.
Okay.
So I hope he'll come back in, if you'll ask him, Dan, to come back in when he's finished. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we also have, I don't know if there's others in the room that haven't spoken, but we also have Mark Swiger. Is that Chuck?
Mark Swiger, I can introduce. Mark was very active back in the day when, hey, Mark, when we were starting up Create West Virginia. He's very active. He served on panels. Tell us a little bit about your Create West Virginia experience, Mark, and about your experience with WVU.
Well, I was one of the few educators who joined in the Create movement back before 2010, so we would say 2007-ish or so, as we were gaining some momentum. And I'd always been kind of attuned to the landscape in the education world. And so this brings me to this meeting really with WVU as a topic. I'm a career educator, 35 years in the classroom, still very engaged in public education. I would say this is my 42nd year coming up where I've been involved at least in some capacity in education. But I've seen this slow deterioration of investment in education And so my take on a lot of this is that we've seen 40 years of austerity in education. And so from the beginning, when I graduated from a liberal arts school in 82, it took me 10 years to get my master's degree because I was teaching every day and slowly whittling away at it. Eventually, in 1992, I received my master's from WVU. And during that process, we, in 1980, and this is just hearsay, I would have to really look at this research a little closer, but in discussions, I've heard that in 1980, when I was a college student, 60% of funding for our state institutions came from the legislature, and it's like 15% now. So these problems are historical. And it's come to a head now because the pandemic spurred a lot of that on, and we miscalculated, I'm sure, the funding. But when you lose that much funding, we see it with PEIA. We see there's a big picture that emerges when we begin to talk about the WVU issue. It isn't isolated. It is, and it isn't just here. So as we see people, and you'll even see in West Virginia things like giving binary choices. You either get a job or you go to college, and college enrollment is down. I think we said 5,000 less students at WVU now than there were 6-7 years ago, possibly. That's freshman numbers dictate your budgets. So there are a lot of issues, not just the ones that have really hit us, like a freight train recently with the budget problems, but this is a larger picture in investment in education.
But what we are saying at Create West Virginia is there are many ways to deal with a challenge, an issue, a problem, many different paths to solutions. And some people have put forward some very interesting solutions to this same problem that are not draconian cuts to faculty and programs.
That's right.
That's not where they start.
Absolutely.
So Delegate Fluharty has come back into the room, and so I'm going to ask him to come back, and Betty Rivarda, I believe, has a question for him.
Tell Betty, hurry up, Betty. I know Betty likes to talk a lot, so she might have a lot of questions. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Sean, how you doing?
Good, man. How you doing? Betty,
Yeah,
what's going
fine.
on? Did she leave?
Betty?
I'm trying to get my video on.
Hi,
Okay.
Sean.
Hey, Betty.
Hi, Sean. It's really great to see you there. I don't know if everyone knows that you're also now and have been the minority whip for the legislature. So you're in the leadership in the Democratic caucus.
Yep.
And whips count for votes, I believe. It's part of the job. So I just want to present this dilemma that's been presented to me in the last day or two, which is on the one hand, all of this chaos at WVU is being driven by the need for more money. And, the money, the people who have the money are the legislature or the governor through his contingency fund or some combination of both. But what I'm hearing is that some of the legislators, at any rate, don't want to give any money to WVU because they don't trust the president. And they don't think they can't depend on how he would use it, especially with all of the things that are coming out about his history of misuse of funds. So is this a catch-22? I mean, how do we get out of this?
Well, I don't know if we went over the numbers earlier, but from my understanding, serving in the legislature, if the legislature would have continued funding towards WVU at a continuous rate equal to years past, the deficit at WVU wouldn't look like $45 million. It would look more like $7 to $9 million. So right there up front, that gives you an idea of the role the legislature plays. So President Gee, and look, I've been critical of him. He's in a tough spot now. I have not had conversations that said, oh, hey, we'll fund WVU as long as he's gone. I think there's been a marked kind of culture in the legislature that has decreased funding to higher education in general, decreased funding to public education in general, and that has been going on for years. And now we have these fake surpluses that you see in the news day in and day out, and the governor touts it as a great accomplishment. And what really happens when you have these fake surpluses is you have real deficits in programs, and real deficits at higher education, and real deficits at public education. And the only thing that those entities can do is then contract. And that is what West Virginia University is currently doing. So I think, Betty, it's a byproduct of the legislature culture that we have now, and an emphasis is not on education like it used to be. However, I will mention that just 2 weeks ago, we had a special session, and we did manage to stroke a check to Marshall University for $45 million for a project at Marshall, which I supported because I support higher education. So, you know, I think there's a game going on in Charleston, and, you know, it's one that happens behind the scenes and then plays out in the public that we're seeing right now.
Delegate Fluharty, can you address the fact that despite all these issues, President Gee actually got a raise to his over $1 million salary? I
can't speak to his salary. I don't know what his salary. I don't believe it was over $1 million. I do not believe it was a raise. I believe it was a continuation of 1 year for the current salary he was receiving. I believe he had received an extension. It's my understanding. Now, I'm not part of the Board of Governors or anybody else, so I can't really speak to that, but that's my understanding.
Well, the media, specifically West Virginia Public Broadcasting, described it as an increase in salary with his concurrent announcement that his last year will be the, 26 year.
Yeah, look, I can't speak to the salary. My understanding was it was not an increase. It was just a year extension under the current numbers. So I mean, that's well beyond my pay grade.
That's true.
Believe me, literally well beyond my pay grade.
I think Betty has some more comments or questions here.
May I ask a follow-up? I understand that the deficit's real, and I understand why, you know, the math, you know, but it seems like going back to something that Becky said, there are a lot of different solutions, and the ones that were chosen seem very even counter. They even, from what I've seen from reports from some of the departments, they were even making money and they're being wiped out. And the math that's being used by the consultants or whoever isn't necessarily valid from the point of view of those departments. But there's this sort of freight train, you know, it's like watching a train wreck, but it's a freight train, you know, that's going down this path toward this one solution, which a lot of us are questioning, including, you know, a lot of faculty and students. So just looking at it practically, it seems to me that my own thought, and I've expressed this in an op-ed that was published in the Charleston Gazette Mail on Sunday, is that we need to reboot and start over and have a real, true, professional, comprehensive planning process that involves people like us and looks at the implications for the whole state, because we know that there are implications for the whole state that aren't being considered. And that's going to take money, at least to get through another year while that process goes on. And that's where I'm a little hung up on, you know, the resistance to giving the money to the current leadership with any confidence that they're capable of rebooting. I'm not asking you to answer that question, and I don't have an answer. But I want to put it on the table, you know, as a kind of dilemma that's been presented to me in the last few days. But
Well, Betty, just to touch on that, I will say this. I believe that President Gee and others should have been in the legislature during the last session advocating for funding, at least in certain areas. And to my knowledge, I did not see President Gee in the legislature advocating. I believe he made a statement in the past week that said he felt that it would be a lost cause, that there would be no support there, and he could very well be right. But I think, given this reflective period that we have now, that we should have at least had knowledge of the dire straits and the cuts that were coming so that the legislature could fully evaluate the circumstances. And I'm not so sure that that took place.
Well, when you pass, when you pass all these, not the House, when the Senate passes these bills right out of the gate with no examination, and that included, I mean, one of the interesting things to me, and I was watching from home and then went up there one of the days of special session, but I had a chance to listen to House Finance. You're on Judiciary, right? I don't think you're
Right.
on. So House Finance, for one thing, to their credit, had full debates on the bills, whereas the Senate just passed them wham bam, and I got a chance to listen to some of those deliberations through the audio streaming, and I agree. I think the 45 million for cybersecurity program at Marshall was very well thought through. There were reasons presented for not waiting for the regular session, doing it now, and it looked like there would be a really great return on investment. It seemed to me that they really made the case for what they were doing. But there was another bill for a hangar for Pierpont, for a program for aircraft mechanics at Pierpont, where the presenter couldn't answer any of the questions. And when someone finally asked him, why are you applying for the funds now? He said, because they're there. $25 million. And at the same time, President Gee is saying, I can't ask for help. And it's just such a, I have a lot of emotion around that issue. I mean, I listened to it in real time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on here?
Well, Betty, I look forward to seeing you back in Charleston soon, okay?
Thank you.
Has anyone
Not spoken yet. Has anyone not had an opportunity to talk? Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here. I believe everyone has had an opportunity to speak.
I
believe-
would, if there's no one else, I'd like to say a little more.
Okay, all right.
I think one thing that, one reason I was excited that Becky wanted to do these, and why she felt like Create West Virginia was like the right vehicle for it. I definitely, it really feels like a time to get creative, and we know that we have to rethink universities in general. We kind of are all, I think we're all kind of opening to see that. There's been sort of this kind of, it's become less and less of, everyone's kind of questioning, is it worth getting a degree? Should I do some online training, or just kind of, even a lot of these, especially in software, a lot of people are just kind of jumping into boot camps and getting a job. And while bachelor's degrees are still favored, we kind of maybe see on the horizon, maybe that's not everything, and maybe there's another way. So I think even though I think it's challenging we want to think really practically about what needs cut, what needs kind of just altered, but also there is a huge opportunity to say, well, what could universities be, and what do we really need from these schools? I think we see a lot of good stuff from the community colleges. I really love what's going on in some of the libraries. I think they've really started tapping into bigger networks and offering more resources. I would like to see personally, in my experience at WVU, I always wished there was a lot more sort of traversability through the schools and different programs, and even when we did an independent study where we in the marketing department, where we were all designing, this with Tzatziki's. It's a fast casual Mediterranean franchise, and there was this national collegiate contest where we designed ads for them and sort of a budget. Here's what you would do in our local area, and our team actually won and tied with Little Rock, Arkansas, which all the judges were flabbergasted by. That there was even a tie was possible, but I just, even when we were working on that project, that was the most collaboration I've seen between the schools personally, because we were working with the journalism school at the time, which then became Reed College of Media, which before then I couldn't get a class in there, and I'd have to switch my major or get a double major if I wanted to learn graphics or video production or any of those sort of creative tools. None of them were taught in the marketing department, which kind of makes no sense to me because it's almost all I do now. And we worked with the music school. Me and some other people wrote a score that went along with the radio ad and the video ad, and it was this multi-college project, but it was very rare. That doesn't really happen, and it just felt like, wow, this is the sort of thing that we could be doing. And I see a lot more collaboration with the community colleges, and I think I just think universities could be a little more creative, and maybe it's hard to when there's sort of our feet are to the fire and there's big budget cuts, maybe it doesn't feel like the time, but it does kind of force our hand, and we need some kind of change.
Can I respond to what he said?
Yes.
Can I?
Sure.
Okay, first of all, be careful what you say about Little Rock. I lived there for almost 17 years, which leads me to say,
I really like the people we met there.
Because, yeah, they were nice. It's amazing who comes from Arkansas. Anyway, my facility with a foreign language has been an asset in every position I've held in my career. Was not mandatory, but certainly enabled me to move up in the organization, to be much more useful to the organization, enabling me to reach out to other agencies, to develop myself as a community and statewide leader. I don't think I would have had those opportunities had I not been had a facility in a foreign language. The other thing I will tell you is when you talk about bridging multi-disciplines, I've always been an interdisciplinary major, undergraduate and graduate, and that's the flexibility you find at a private school, which is going to make it a lot more desirable to what you were just talking about, that if they feel too much structure at a state university, they will choose to do their best to go to a private school that offers that opportunity. I'm finished.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Folks, what do you think? It's coming up on 7 o'clock. I think we've had a good hour's worth of discussion. I'm very pleased that we have a reporter here from the two Wheeling newspapers, and that Delegate Sean Fluharty showed up tonight, and a couple of people who just want to know what's going on here. They are new residents of West Virginia, new residents to Wheeling, enthusiastic about coming here, and educated people. So we have a lot of work to do. Tomorrow night, we're going onward to Martinsburg. If you have friends over in Martinsburg, we'd love to have some people show up. It's pretty good. It's a good feeling when there's lots of people in a room talking about things. It's wonderful to have you all join us on Zoom. There's several things that are brewing out there. Create West Virginia has created a place on the website. It's called Resources. It's got articles, letters, information about what's going on. What we are striving to do at Create West Virginia is create a repository of information on the createwv.org site. So you can watch the site and the Facebook page for Create WV to find information about what's happening. What we are going to do is compile a report from these 4 meetings that we're planning. Tomorrow night in Martinsburg, Wednesday, September 6th in Morgantown. That'll be our final in-person meeting. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to get to all the sections of the state. We wish we had been able to. But watch for our report. It will be made to the Board of Governors on Friday, September 8th, and plenty of time for them to read and digest it, and plenty of time for you to take a look at it too and come up with a vision for the West Virginia University that we want in the future. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.